video is for the faux leather sample. So I've got some faux leather here, and this one is a woven. Some of them are knits, so they have a little bit of stretch to them, but this particular one looks like it's a woven based on the selvage. So for this one, we're going to first show you how to cut it. So I do not want to put any pins through this material, because once I poke a hole in here, that hole will not disappear like a woven thread or a woven fabric would. So I don't want to put any pins. So instead, I'm going to flip over to the wrong hand side, take my pattern piece, again the same rectangle we've been using, lay it face down, because we've got our fabric upside down, so my pattern piece needs to be upside down as well. Lay it face down, and then on the back, use my fabric chalk to mark the edges of my piece, and then I can cut from my chalk line. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that out. Okay, and I need a second one as well, so I'll do a second one, and then I can take both of those and cut them out with my pinking and my straight shears. Okay, I've got that cut out with two edges, or sorry, one edge with my straight shears, and then the other three edges are with my pinking shears. So now we're ready to start stitching. So this particular, we're ready to set up our machine. We need to get the right needle and everything. So for this one, we need to use our Teflon foot. So you can see mine is colored green. That's the Teflon coating that's on my foot. Yours may be white. It just depends on your foot or in your machine. But that Teflon coating on the foot allows it to slide smoothly over the leather. If you didn't have that Teflon foot on there, the foot would stick to your material, and so it wouldn't move throughout the machine easily. It would get stuck, and your threads would get tangled on the bottom. So we need that foot so that it can slide smoothly across the surface of the leather. Okay, so Teflon foot. For your needle, size 80 needle, medium weight, would work well. Unless it's a very thick leather, then you can go up to a heavyweight needle. For your thread, you just need a good quality polyester thread. Works well on faux leather. And then our stitch length is going to be 2.5, so make sure that you've got 2.5 on your machine. Okay, and this one is going to be it's called a fake flat felled. So it's kind of like a flat felled seam, except instead of folding under that raw edge on the last step, we're just going to leave it raw, because this leather does not fray, so there's no need to hide that raw edge. So for this one, we're going to start wrong sides together. Since we don't have to fold under that edge, I'm just going to do it at a 1/2 inch. And again, don't put pins through it, so you can either use little clips, little binder clips, or something like that to keep those two layers together. This is a pretty short seam, so I'm just going to do it with my hands. Make sure that it starts off nice and even on the raw edges. Line it up with my 1/2 inch. And then I'll just make sure that these raw edges stay even as I stitch. So it's going slowly and adjusting the raw edges of my fabric as needed. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. Let's head over to our ironing board. Okay, now we're ready to press this. So this is a faux leather. It's from a man-made fiber. So we want to put this on the polyester setting so that we don't melt it as we press. And we also don't want to put direct heat on here because you could burn the fabric. So make sure to always use your press cloth to protect your fabric. So again, bust open that seam to begin with. My iron had shut off. It turned back on, but it had timed out, so I'm waiting for it to heat back up a little bit. Okay, so my seam is continuing to pop up, as you can see, even though I've tried to press it. So we are going to have to do two tricks. So the first one is to heat it up and let it cool with weight on top of it. So I'm going to bust that open. And this is for any seam that doesn't want to stay pressed down, that wants to pop back up. These are tricks that you can use for any type of fabric that needs to be pressed and it's not cooperating. So heat it up really well, and then we put a weight on top of it and let it cool with that weight. So that letting it cool while it's pressed down like this will kind of lock that press into place. If you move it while it's warm, then it will release the press that you just did. And then we'll show you the next step as well, the next trick. Okay, so slightly better, but still popping up quite a bit. So the next trick is to beat your seam. So you're gonna need something heavy, like this wooden block, and you're going to literally beat your seam into submission. So heat it up again, and then you're going to take that wood block and hit it to get it to pound it into a crease. Okay, so I'm going to work on this seam and try and get it pressed down flat. Okay, the next step is to trim that seam allowance that's going to be on the bottom. So in our case, that's on the right hand side. Trim that down to 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to press that other seam allowance over on top of it. And again, for this one, it's a fake flat felt, so we do not turn under the raw edge. We just leave it there. It'll be a cut edge, but leather, real leather and faux leather do not fray. Okay, now we're ready to do our top stitch. So I've got my seam here, and I'm going to do right next to that cut edge, do my top stitch to hold those two seam allowances down. So you want this as close to that cut edge as possible. Okay, and now you can see the finished seam. Let's turn this right side up. There we go. So this seam Because we started with wrong sides together, all of our seam allowances are on the outside of the garment, so that would be a design choice. If you wanted your seam allowances to be on the inside of the garment, this is what the outside of the garment would look like, just a seam with a stitch line next to it. If you wanted that to be the outside of your garment, then you would have to start right sides together.